I remember Swami Ranganathanandaji. Some of you may have seen him. And he was the president of our order, a very advanced spiritual practitioner. I mean, I got my sannyasa vows from him. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
There was another old monk who passed away very recently. Both Ranganathanandaji and this old monk, Nirmuktanandaji, they were disciples of Mahapurush Maharaj, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. One day, when Ranganathanji was the president of our order, this other old monk, Nirmuktanandaji, walked into his room and asked him, "What will become of me?" And Ranganathanji replied, "This is your last birth. I shall come again. I shall do Swamiji's work. But you do not have to be born again." So that's mukti as Hindus would understand it, moksha. Now when he told this to me, and I had heard it's common knowledge among monks there in Belur Math, and I asked Nirmuktanji directly one day. He was sitting in front of Holy Mother's temple in Belur Math. "Did President Maharaj tell you this?" And he completed it. He said, "Yes, I went there and asked him, and President Maharaj said all this to me." And to cut a long story short, I wanted to know what a realized person feels. So that's all we would ask. Here is the river, the Ganga flowing past. Here is the temple. Here are people walking past. And does a realized person who is enlightened, see the all-pervading consciousness, the divinity everywhere? And he gave me certain answers. But my point is elsewhere. Then I ventured forth to ask him, "Do you see that now? Is this your realization now?" That's what I asked him. He smiled and he said, "Well, this nested story within story, because he told me the story of two other monks who had asked the same question. Buddhanandaji was there in Delhi, and Swami Jagadananda, a very senior monk, who was supposed to be an enlightened person in his own lifetime. So one day Buddhanandaji asked Jagadanandaji, "Sir, people say you are enlightened. Are you enlightened?" And Jagadanandaji sweetly smiled and said, "If I say yes, will you believe me? Will that make any difference to you?" I understood what Nirmuktanji wanted to say, so I bowed down to him and said, "Okay, Maharaj, that's all right." So that's the third of your questions. The first two questions are subtle. But tell me, do you come from does non-dualism appeal to you?
Yes.
The path of knowledge, Vedanta?
Yes.
You read any Raman Maharshi or something?
Mm.
All right. And I can tell you. But this, please take it very carefully. There are experiences. I'm going to deny all of this next, but that's why I'm telling you beforehand. There are spiritual experiences which are extremely valuable, definitely much superior to the experience we are having now, right now. There are. And they are worth acquiring. Yes. I'm saying all this because I'm going to deny it next. So yes, there are. And there are spiritual states. There are. We know that there are states. Our waking state is a state. We all experience it. Our sleep is a state. Deep sleep is another state. Dreaming is a state. There are altered states of consciousness. People have experienced these things. So there are spiritual states. There are spiritual experiences. There is no doubt about it. Many have acquired, many have experienced it. Many more are experiencing it, and they will experience it in future. Having said this, alright, I'll just put it very simply to you. If you have any questions, then you can ask me afterwards about that. But now the answer to your question. Enlightenment, in the Advaitic sense, is not a state. Enlightenment, in the Advaitic sense, is not an experience. Then what is it? That which comes and goes is a state. That which comes and goes is a state. The Atman, the pure consciousness is speaking about, it doesn't come and go. it's not an experience because the Atman as such cannot be experienced. If you say that, oh, so what's the point of it? You should have told me that, I wouldn't have come. It is more than experienced. Atman is the possibility of all experience. Atman is that which makes every experience possible. The experience which we are having right now, and the experience which a great sadhaka has of God or visions and all of that is because of the Atman. The Atman, the enlightened person, knows or realizes the Atman in and through every experience. Kena Upanishad says, Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam vindate. The one who realizes this Atman in every experience, in eating, in speaking, in talking, in walking, in meditating, in joking and laughing, in every experience, the Atman is realized. That is enlightenment. I am not saying all of this, as I said earlier, spiritual experiences of different gods and goddesses with form, those are possible, those are extremely valuable, and it's on our path to enlightenment. But remember, they come and go. Yes.
This Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the ultimate state, even today you mentioned, to come to the samadhi state. Samadhi, is it still a state?
Yes, samadhi is a state. Because it comes. Right now we are not in samadhi. So very obviously it's a state. Of course, some may be in samadhi. In Uttarakhand, a Vedanta class was going on, and suddenly a sound was heard, this soft purring sound, and the teacher said, "Mishra ji, kya ho gaya? Mishra ji, what happened to you?" And he suddenly startled and Uttanik samadhi lag gayi, a little samadhi, a little trance. He had fallen asleep as he was snoring. Another Swami told me, early morning in Beluru Math you have to meditate. And the danger is always there, ever-present danger of going into different states of... So he said, on one particular day I felt my meditation was really going well today. It's really going well today. And suddenly I felt someone, we always wear this, someone hitting me with this from behind. I looked around and I saw this Swami who whispered sharply, "Sleep if you must, but why should you snore?" He was sleeping and dreaming that he's meditating very well today.
Swamiji, the same question. I'm also sorry to press on that. So, if we are experiencing Atman in everything,
Yes.
it's still an experience.
It's not one experience among others. It's not an experience apart from others. Swami Vivekananda puts it this way, and he said it in London, in fact. He says that the Atman cannot be experienced as an experience, as I experience this chair or table or something. It cannot be experienced in that way. And then he says, but wait, you must not go away with the idea that it is unknown. It is more than known, he says. I can put it in different ways. You see, there are wooden chairs and tables here. If I say, look at it, look at the table, you say, yes, I see the table. And then tell you, look at the wood. I said, okay, I look at the wood. Is it a different experience? Well, you would say it's the same experience because you are seeing the same thing. You don't see anything new. But it's a change in perspective. And the change is in your understanding only. You're shifting your perspective. You're looking at the object, name and form, table. Name, form, function, table. Here is the table, it has a particular shape, it has a particular name, and a particular function, you can put the camera on that. But it is wood. When you look at it as wood, then it's the same thing, but would you really call it a different experience?
It's realization, as I feel, rather than experience.
That's what she's asking. Is realization an experience?
It is realization, I feel.
True.
Yeah.
Is it an experience? And Advaita says finally,
No.
but the moment you say it is not an experience, what happens is most people will think, oh, it cannot be experienced, so what's the use? No, it's more than experienced. Therefore, then when you look at table and see wood, now when you look at the chair and the wooden paneling here, everywhere you see the same wood. And you've been seeing it all through, but now you recognize it as wood. So it's not a new experience, but definitely it's a new way of looking at things. It's a new realization, yes. It's a new realization.
So purpose is in unity. Sorry, purpose is the unity in every matter.
The table example and wood example shows that it's unity, because I often tell this to students in my class in Belur, the young monks who are going to be monks. I say, count the furniture here, and they count, okay, 25 benches and 25 tables. And then I say, count the substance, wood. It's only one substance, it's all wood. Earlier there were 25 and 25, 50 pieces of furniture. How many are there now? So one. So what did you do? Did you smash all the furniture together into a mass of wood? No, it's exactly the same what it was. It's just a change in perspective. Now we realize there's one substance with multiple names and forms, like waves in an ocean. So that's one effect, unity. Unity, or more than unity, identity. Identity is closer than unity. Yeah.
I know it's a separate topic and a topic in itself. আমাদেরকে একটু ভক্তি যোগ সম্বন্ধে বলুন in the light of Vakamrita. I know probably it's but I'd like if you could please.
Yes. However, whether it's an experience or not an experience, whether it's a state or not a state, this question and the answer to it is useful in understanding Advaita. But if you want to regard it as an experience or a state, there's no problem. Only thing is, we must first be clear that it is not a state, it's not an experience. If you say it gives you a new way of looking at the world, that's a new experience, fine, I have no quarrel with that. Because the Jnani definitely has a different way of looking at the world, of understanding and experiencing the world than we have. It's just not a new, different kind of experience. It's what's already there. But there are many spiritual experiences which are new experiences. Suddenly one gets a vision of light, suddenly one gets a vision of Vishnu or Krishna. Those are new experiences. They come and go. And they are possible.
So it's merging, what you're saying.
It is not merging. That's a good question. It is not merging. It's not that Brahman is something separate, like a raindrop, because that kind of imagery is used. And that's correct. Even Shankaracharya uses it in Vivek Chudamani. Like a raindrop falling into the ocean, becoming the ocean. Yes. But in the final analysis, you would realize that's what I always was. There was no real separation and real merging. It's not that the lion who thought he was sheep, he was a sheep and he merged back into his lion self. It's not really that. It was always a lion. He recognized what it was. And when we realize that, from all accounts, that's what happens. It's like a veil being lifted. It's not like I was separate, now I got merged with oneness. The oneness was always there. It was the one universal ground of existence, and we recognize that. Yes.
In this question of oneness, we still go through this as a separate entities. We go through all these human experiences, pain, suffering,
Yes.
likes, dislikes, and all those things. How do we, from on one hand intellectually understand we are one, but at a physical and emotional and all that level, we are individual identity. How do we reconcile? How do we transcend them?
That is true. It's philosophically speaking, the example of the table and the bench and the wood still applies. Even when you realize it as it's all wood, then it's still a wooden Advaita. It's not. If you say that's Advaita, that's. But even after that, a bench is still a bench, a table is still a table. They look different and the uses are different, and that's perfectly fine. Even after realization of oneness, or even after conviction comes that there is a hidden spiritual oneness to all of this, even after that, the differences will be exactly the way they are, and that's fine. That's the way it is. Now we act on that knowledge. Earlier I was acting on the basis, on the assumption that we are all different. I am a limited being apart from you. And therefore fear comes. The first product is fear, anxiety. Desire comes. These are all products of separation. Neither fear nor desire is there where you are one. For yourself, you neither desire yourself nor fear yourself. The Upanishad says, ya atra udaram pashyati tasya bhayam bhavati. Who sees the slightest difference here? The first product is fear. So, we act on that knowledge. We bring to bear the light of that knowledge on our day-to-day situations. But Vedanta has a wide range of techniques to apply, of approaches. It's not just the highest Advaitic knowledge. You start from a more practical level. See, fear, anxiety, desire. The moment we feel ourselves to be limited individual beings, we feel incomplete and we want completion. And for that we act. And Shankaracharya has a equation for this. Avidya kama karma. Ignorance of our purnatva, of our infinite nature, avidya. That leads to kama, desire. Because I am not full, I am not complete. And this particular thing, this gadget, this job, this person, this meditation practice, it will make me complete. It never does. It hasn't worked for anybody till today. Because you already are complete. Until you know that, no amount of adding anything will make you complete. So, desire comes when we feel ourselves limited. Now, realizing our infinite nature and realizing we are beyond desire, we don't need anything, that's the final goal. But we can start off by seeing, at a much more practical level, by seeing, for example, till today, all my efforts at making myself happy, and all that I've done till my life, throughout my life, is to make myself happy. When I grabbed that last piece of cake as a kid, before my brother or sister could grab it, it's just so that I could be happy. And when, as a father or a mother, I gave that last piece of cake to my children, because that would make me happy. Whether selfishly or unselfishly, altruistically, whatever we do. Now, let us see that none of this has made me happy so far, by acting for this limited body and mind. So a simple step would be to become a little less selfish. Have you noticed one thing? Any one single unselfish, altruistic act that we have done in our lives till today, nobody ever has regretted it. We have never regretted any unselfish thing that we have done. Never. If I've helped somebody, said a good thing to somebody, been nice to somebody, today and tomorrow and year after year, when you look back upon that even, you will never regret that. You may regret anything else in the world, but something done for others without any quid pro quo, you never regret it. I often quote Seligman's experiment. Professor Martin Seligman, positive psychology. So he wanted to show this to his students in America, and one day he told his students that we will go to see this movie. No class today. The students, of course, were happy. They all went out and saw the movie, and they came back, and he had a questionnaire for them. Please rate your satisfaction from 1 to 5. 1, no satisfaction; 5, full satisfaction. Many of them rated it 3, 4, or 5. Next week again he says no class. And they are very happy. Movie, sir? Said, no movie today. Today we are going out to this part of the town where poor families stay, and we have arranged to take toys and clothes, and we'll spend the afternoon with those poor kids from poor families. And that's what they did. And they came back, rate your satisfaction 1 to 5. And all of them gave some rating, 3, 4, 5. But the interesting thing happened 6 months later. Suddenly in the middle of the class he came with his questionnaires and he said, respond to this. And the question was, 6 months ago we had seen a movie. Rate your satisfaction about the movie now, when you look back upon that movie. And many of them said, I can't even remember the name of the movie. I remember vaguely we didn't have a class one day and we saw a movie. And satisfaction now, how much satisfied do you feel about that movie right now? 1 or 2 or 3, not more than that, nobody. And rate your satisfaction about that afternoon we spent with those kids. And the satisfaction level was unchanged. What they had said 4 or 5, 6 months ago, 6 months later also it was 4 or 5. So that's a powerful learning. Though it does not, it appears to be counterintuitive. Our general feeling is when I act for myself, I make myself happy. This is the learning that when I act for others, I make myself happy. I suppose parenthood is a training in that. You see, children are the most selfish creatures in the world.
Because it's our true nature.
Being selfish.
No, unselfish.
Unselfish. But children are the most selfish creatures in the world. They can be suddenly unselfish, but generally, over the period of childhood, any parent knows. In India now, there's this huge media rage about a lady who actually killed her own daughter for money. And there was this, it's a scandal, big scandal, and so all the papers and the media is making a big thing out of it. And there was in one of the editorial columns, another lady has written about this, where everybody is condemning so and so for killing her own daughter, and everybody is saying, how could a mother do this to her own child? And this lady writes, honestly, I've never met the mother who has, at one time or the other, has not wished to do the same thing to their own children. It made me feel like killing you. But parenthood is a training in being unselfish. Same child who's so selfish, becoming a parent, is basically living for the children. And it happens naturally. Now expand that beyond the limit of your own flesh and blood, your own kith and kin. Because child means something connected to this body, just an extension of this body. So expand it beyond that. So one practical step in the direction of that oneness, how to deal with the practical problems of life, is to be altruistic, nishkama, unselfish, rather than being selfish. Even Richard Dawkins in Cambridge, selfish gene, people misinterpret. He writes himself, he said people misinterpret it without reading my book. They say that I'm telling people to be selfish. He says no. Our genetic systems, the physical body predisposes us to be selfish. But it is the job of education and culture to make people altruistic. And I'm saying altruism is extremely important for civilization. And that has to be inculcated, in fact. Okay, there was a question.
My question is, you talked about having the benefit of doing some kind of meditation or sadhana, which is, I guess, is a very important step in spiritual life. And for that sadhana, as I understand, that meditation is one of the very important things to take us into that path. And while meditation, you talked about those 8 steps of the Ashtanga yoga.
Yes.
But when I have spoken with monks in various places, and one message I get, that is my interpretation, that we are always encouraged to come through the bhakti yoga patha. And I even asked some of the monks that, why don't you teach us the Raja Yoga? Because I did Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, and by Swamiji. And Raj Yoga appealed me very, very much, because it kind of told me that it is a way, it is a very scientific way, which can take me very quickly to that path.
Yes. So
I'm not talking about shortcutting, but I'm thinking that it kind of, if I merge the Bhakti and Raj Yoga together, my path will be much accelerated. And that's the kind of impression I got by reading the book, rightly or wrongly. But when I asked this question, that how do I learn the Raj Yoga, because one of the things Swamiji has written very clearly, that never try to
practice
Raj
without
Yoga
a teacher.
And I was in search of a true, teacher who can teach me Raj Yoga, but I didn't find any till now. And the kind of message I'm getting, that in Ramakrishna mission, that is not the preferred path. Bhakti Yoga is the preferred path, and I probably understand why when I read, Kathamrita, Thakur is saying that in Kali Yuga, a bhakti path is the path, not any others. But I still,
So you are asking that?
I'm asking that, is it right to think that in Ramakrishna mission that is not the way you are asking us to go, or if that is wrong, then where I can learn that?
Yeah.
Or in the mission, you the monks maybe, I don't know whether it's the right question.
I
that
understand.
you follow
There was
that
another question
Rajya.
about bhakti too there. And there might be other questions also related to this. Yes. You see, this question was asked by Krishna, by Arjuna to Krishna in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Which is better? Path of knowledge or the path of devotion? Path of devotion. And Krishna clearly said the path of devotion is better. But why? He says, Klesho adhikas taras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavad bhiravapyate. The path of the unmanifest, pure consciousness within. I want to realize that. He says that is difficult. The troubles are many on that path. And what are the troubles? I'll tell you. And they are difficult for people, he says, dehavad bhiravapyate. Dehavat means those who are embodied. Now we are all embodied. Even a person who is pursuing the path of Jnana Yoga is also presumably embodied, because without a body, why should anybody practice? But what he means is those whose attachment to the body is very strong, whose self-identity is strongly rooted in the body. I am this. And that's an unshakable truth for me. And I suspect it is so for most of us. Even if whatever I read, when I have a stomach ache, or when I am sick, or some problem comes, I act, whatever I say or whatever I think, I act as if I am the body. So that shows a very deep rooting in the body. What Jnana Yoga does, or Raja Yoga, it does is that by our own effort, we can come to a realization of our true nature. That's the path. The peculiar appeal of Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga, what you saw today, I could see many people nodding in agreement, not nodding off to sleep. The reason is because it's talking about something here and now which you can relate to. It's right here. If you follow carefully what the Vedanta is talking about, it's talking about a fact. There's nothing to believe there. It's a reality which is present right now. And that's the appeal. It's rational, it's, call it scientific if you will, and it appeals only to your understanding. It does not ask you to believe in anything, any particular form of God, any particular religion even. It's Swami Vivekananda said, for this age, Vedanta it will appeal to any educated person, any rational person. He went to so far as to say this is the only religion for this age. The problem with that, on the other side, is that because you're thrown to your own resources, if you start practicing, after some time we will realize that how little we are capable of, how very little we are capable of. It's partly because of human weakness. And on the other hand, there are these bhakti paths. Every religion has a strong emphasis on devotion to God. You take the help of God. The disadvantage there is it depends on belief. You have to start with strong belief. You are required to believe, you are required to accept, to begin with. Later it becomes as much of a fact as jnana seems right now. So, the Vedantic Mahavakya, the great saying, Tat Tvamasi, that thou art. Consider this carefully. All of religion is contained in that. There are two terms there. Tat Tvam. Tat means God, that. There's a very neutral term for God, that. The English that and Sanskrit tat, they mean the same thing, that. And Tvam means you. Thou art that. Now, there are religions which are entirely concerned with that tat, that. So in Hinduism you find Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktaism, worship of the Divine Mother, worship of Shiva, worship of Narayana. All these forms, they are heavily concentrated on tat padartha. In Sanskrit it's called padartha, tat padartha in Advaita Vedanta. And there are advantages to that and disadvantages. The advantage is God has no problems. God is infinite. God is all powerful. Only problem is you have to believe. God is, tat means, they say in Sanskrit, paroksha. It is not empirically evident. It's not immediately obvious. You have to make a conscious decision to believe. So paroksha, tat padartha. Tvam, you. There are certain religions. So not only in Hinduism, you find the tat padartha approach in Islam, in Judaism, in Christianity. They're entirely oriented Godwards. In those approaches, who am I is not an important question. I am searching for God. And there are these other religions, the Tvam Padartha, the thou-oriented religions or I-oriented religions. Buddhism. You see, they'll never talk about God. The whole thing is directed inwards, discovering the truth inwards through meditation. So Buddhism. Even the Buddha in certain forms of Mahayana Buddhism, where Buddha is worshipped, the aim is not to get a vision of the Buddha. The aim is the Buddha helps you to get nirvana. So they are entirely oriented on the self and realizing the no self doctrine or whatever the way they put it. Jainism. They do not talk about a worship of a god. It's the liberation of the self which they are interested in. In Hinduism, you have Raja Yoga, there is Patanjali Yoga, which is the freeing of the self. God, there's God in the system of yoga, but in the system of yoga, God is he's a much reduced God. God is a teacher. He is the Adi Guru and is a teacher. He helps you in realization. Sankhya in Hinduism is again related only to the self. So now, and the advantage of this path is as against the other path. In this path, you don't have to start with the belief. You see, in Christianity or in certain schools of Hinduism, the question of should I believe in God? The sadhakas will always have a problem. Once in a while they have a doubt, does God exist? So that kind of doubt will come in the path of sadhana, in the path of tat padartha. In every religion you find this in the lives of the great saints and of the people who have struggled to find God. In these paths, there is no doubt that I exist. Only even in Buddhism, they don't say that I don't exist. It's just the nature of the I they are investigating. The nature of the I is no self. It's a continuous changing mass which is mistaken for a permanent self. So in this path, there is no doubt that I exist. There is no question of any God to believe in, and nobody doubts that I exist. So there is no question of starting with belief. In Sankhya, in Patanjali Yoga, that's the appeal of Patanjali Yoga, because everything is set out in this way. You do this, you'll experience this. You'll do this, you'll experience this. And you don't have to believe in anything particular. You only have to believe to the extent that if I do this, I'll get this experience. That much.
We do not have a teacher to guide
Yes, I'll
us
come back to
through
that. And so this is the advantage. The disadvantage of this path is, yes, I know I exist, but that doesn't solve any problem. That's in fact the problem, because I have so many sorrows. So God exists, I have a doubt about his existence, it's difficult to believe, but he has no problem. He or she has no problem. I have no doubt that I exist, but I have lots of problems. So there are advantages and disadvantages of both paths. And what Advaita does is, this is a unique insight, it throws these two together with the advantages of both and the disadvantages, without the disadvantages of either. How does it accomplish that? It says what you are in reality, the pure consciousness which we spoke about today, that is free of all those problems. And that is God. So that pure consciousness, if you understand it carefully, there is no question of disbelieving in that or disregarding it, because it's quite obvious something like that is there. And if that is God, then in Vedanta, in Advaita Vedanta, the question of whether God exists or not is not a problem at all. In Uttarakhand, they asked Swami, ईश्वर के अस्तित्व में अकाट्य प्रमाण दीजिए. Give me an irrefutable proof of the existence of God. An irrefutable proof. If you know Christian theology or Nyaya theology in Hinduism, you know there are pramanas, Ishvara pramanas, or Saint Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas' proofs of the existence of God. But they're all, if you don't know, you're not missing anything, because if you read those proofs, you will know it won't convince anybody. If you're convinced, you'll be happy. If you're not convinced, it won't convince you. But here's the question. Give me a proof which cannot be refuted that God exists. And the answer was immediate. Because Swami was an Advaita, and he said, Tumhara apna astitva, your own existence is the existence of the proof of God. And it makes sense in Advaita because that existence, at the core of that is God itself, according to Advaita Vedanta. That is literally God. Now, coming back to your question, these are the different approaches. Yeah. Now, the difficulty is, that when we take up the path of Raja Yoga, the very basic disciplines, yama and niyama, restraint of the senses, even Advaita Vedanta, we may talk so much about pure consciousness everywhere, but where the problem comes, next, once they say, are you convinced about it? Yes. Now what do I do? And they'll tell you, live your life accordingly. Live your life accordingly. You are not allowed to be upset under any condition. And so one Swami put it humorously. Whatever the setup, you cannot be upset. And that's terribly difficult. You are not allowed to be upset. Swami Vivekananda says, he prepared a beautiful note on the 4 yogas, jnana, bhakti, karma and dhyana, Raja Yoga. Maybe somebody asked him, it's in the complete works. And there at the end he talks about jnana yoga, path of non-dualism, of knowledge. And he says, in this path, many come to an understanding, few realize. And he says, this path, you would say, what does jnana yoga consist of? If you ask us, our answer would be, well, based on what the Swami said, it consists on analyzing yourself and realizing yourself as pure consciousness, holding on to that and acting like that in life and so on and so forth. Swami Vivekananda says, this path consists chiefly in the control of the senses. You wouldn't think that, He's talking so much about pure consciousness and all that, but ultimately it comes down to this. The senses run outwards to the world, and we react to things in the world outside, the way people behave, react to our own emotions. All of this, you have to be detached from it as a witness. And all of these have to subside. It's not at all easy. Even the little bit we try, it's a terrible struggle. Ramanujacharya comes in there, Vishishta Advaita, and he says, see, what Krishna is telling us is, realization, the preliminary condition for realization is control of the senses, Indriya Nigraha. And then he tells us, it is only the Sthita Prajna, the enlightened one, who can control the senses. Now he says, Krishna has put us in a vicious circle. Without perfect discipline, you cannot realize God. You cannot be enlightened. If you are not enlightened, you cannot have perfect discipline. Then he says, Jnana nishtha dushprapya. Ramanujacharya says, it's impossible to be established in this path of knowledge. Then what's the way out? Ramanuja says, there bhakti helps. Bhakti is love, emotion. You yoke your emotions, that which runs out towards the world, to God. Believing in God, the existence of God, and Advaita helps you to believe in God, because if that divinity within is there everywhere, and that is God. Krishna says, the consciousness within everybody, that's who I am and that's God. If that's true, then it must be there. And that is what we worship as if we are separate. When I pray to God, it is there. It's an undeniable fact. When I make my love flow to that God, love is so powerful that it pulls everything else along. You see, what is the problem with in spiritual life? As Swami in the Himalayas said, the problem is not in our intellect. The intellectual problem is easily clarified. If you read a few books of Vedanta, attend a few classes, you will begin to get a good idea of what the Upanishads are saying. It's not very difficult. But what is difficult is that which pulls us to the world and that which gives us pain and suffering in the world is not rooted in our intellect. It's rooted in Sanskrit, it's in our prana, in our heart, in our desires and emotions. That's what is pulling us, not lack of understanding. Jnana operates, knowledge operates at the level of the intellect. Bhakti operates at the level of the prana, of the emotions, of the mind. You know where our mind dwells? Not on what we understand, on what we love. Our mind generally tends to dwell on what we love, what we want, not what we understand. Krishna says again and again, Mayarpita manobuddhi. Submit or focus thy intellect and thy mind on me. Why thy intellect and thy mind? I may have decided with my intellect God exists, I am Brahman, and everything is clearly decided, and then lock it up in a vault and go on doing whatever I was doing in the world outside. Throughout the day, if I ask, do I ever think that I am Atman? Do I ever think that God is everywhere? No. My buddhi says yes. My intellect has decided this, but I spend day after day without thinking about God. So mind is not on God. It's quite possible. So mind will be on God. Meditation depends on the mind, not on so much on the buddhi. Mind will be on God when the mind wants God. And that's why bhakti comes in. So therefore, in the path of meditation in the Ramakrishna mission, those you are initiated, you know, there is an element of meditation, Raja Yoga elements are there. There is an element of Tantra. Mantra Shastra is there. There is an powerful element of bhakti. And there is a powerful element of jnana also. Though we do not emphasize that much, but if you read Swami Sarvapriyananda ji is the great master and all. So when he talks about what happens when we meditate in that way, I'll put it to you in a very simple way, the way I think. We all have the capacity to understand jnana. We all have the capacity to feel bhakti. We all have the capacity to do things, karma. We all have the capacity to focus, dhyana. Why not use all of it? Why play off one path against another? Why should I say that, no, I want to do it only by Advaita. I want to do it only by meditation. You can. Swami Vivekananda says it is possible. By knowledge, by meditation, by work, or by love, by one or more or all of these. You be free. That's the whole of religion. We have all these capacities. These are all cognitive capacities. I mean, these are cognitive, affective, and cognitive faculties in a human being. So we have these faculties.